Good morning. Welcome to the morning show on WRCO Radio. I'm Ron Fruit. Welcome to the WRCO Radio Jeff Nania Book Club. We have Jeff, we have Dale, we have Gene, and we're going to talk about literature. We're going to talk about a book signing event that will take place in downtown Richland Center tomorrow at Okuch Books and Libations. So we have just a fun program to bring you, and we do it exactly 1 year after we first met Jeff, because it was Valentine's Day of last year when Jeff made his first appearance on the program. Author Jeff Nania is with us today. Dale Schultz joins us. It's great to have Dale behind our microphone again. And Gene Burkett is here today as well. Gene, in fact, kind of opened the window and the door to Jeff's writing and gave you a lot better marks than she ever gave me, Jeff, when I was in her class at UW.
That's not
Richland.
true.
Yes, it is. To all of you, welcome. Jeff, you've had a busy year. Congratulations on your accomplishments and best wishes as you get ready for a book signing in our community tomorrow.
Well, who would have ever dreamed? I mean, the honest truth is, a year ago, we hadn't really sold any books. And my first radio interview as a mystery writer and my first visit to a bookstore as a mystery writer were right here in Richland Center. And the support the community gave and the people that turned out, and we had a great time. It was a lot of fun. And it's worked out very well, and we've just thrilled with all the people we got to meet this last year and talk with, and it's been great. It's been great. I can't tell you how much I appreciate what you guys have done.
I have to agree, though, with what Gene said. It really is incumbent upon you, your writing, the way that you work with people. A lot of that success you have owned and have deserved. So congratulations. Tell us a little bit about what will happen at Okuch tomorrow. Will it be similar to a year ago?
Yeah, it's going to be similar. And what happened is last year we introduced the book Figure 8, which was the first book in a series now. And tomorrow we're going to introduce Spider Lake, which is the second book in the series. Our hero is back, and he's recovered, and he's finding his way through a new life in northern Wisconsin. And but so our hero, this guy John Cabrelli, a well-known writer told me that I needed to decide on some rules for my writing, personal rules. And I've got one personal rule. In my books, the bad guys are never going to win. Never.
Good for you.
You might be confused about who the bad guys are, but they're never going to win. And John Cabrelli, who's the main character in the book, has a sense of justice. He also has a good idea of what a real hero is. He's not mistaken. And in the second book, we meet a lot of real heroes. I mean, heroes who are coming from small communities, or heroes that they're so involved in their life that they would put everything on the line for it, like people do all the time. Just normal people.
Dale, it's great to welcome you to the program today. You were a fan of this gentleman because of who he is, but you've become a real fan of this gentleman because of how he can write.
Well, there's no doubt about that. Jeff and I go all the way back to Mrs. Knabel's class and both have the same twisted ear marks. And I'm just delighted that she saw something worth working with in both of us. And I think that, if you talk about heroes, in everyday life, you think about the teachers we have in our community and the investment that they make in our children, and the pleasure we have watching them grow up. And as parents, we know that our kids are impacted as much by outsiders and their friends as they are by their mother and father. And I just think that that's one of the nicest things about the book, is that we're kind of reminded in that lesson, but not in a preachy way. And in this world that seems to be increasingly dystopian, it's nice to read a book that, gets you well grounded with values, a book that grandma can read and children can read, the whole family can read together. And so often now we have books that contain subject material that you really can't share with children, but what a wonderful family activity. And what a lot of people don't know is that's kind of what got Jeff into this. He grew up in a family where on vacation, the whole family got together, read a book, and discussed it. And, we're in a world now where people get lost with their electronic devices in their own head, in their own echo chambers, and a lot of it is negative. And there is something wholesome about small communities. We know that's why we live here in Richland Center. And I think if you read this book, you'll be renewed in your faith in your hometown. And for me, that's special.
Did you see classmate Jeff Nania being an author someday in those early years?
Not on your life. Probably if Mrs. Knabel was around, she might be more surprised than me. But I will say this, we have had a lot of capers. We spent a lot of time philosophizing about life in a duck blind. And there's a little of that in the book. In fact, at some point, I hope Jeff's going to read the first 2 paragraphs of the book, because that should whet any reader's appetite right there. A murder mystery that begins like that, I think it is kind of special.
Mrs. Knabel would probably have said something like, referring to Dale, Senator who?
She wasn't fooled by much.
Gene, this has to be rewarding for you. You have given so much in education to our community, to recognize how much that educators
I'm looking
give.
at one.
Thank you. Thank you. But it is, isn't it, to realize that what people can do and sometimes to set them off and see where life takes them?
Absolutely. It's better than pay. It really is. And I've lived so long that I see students all the time, and I'm taking credit for these guys because of my sister Marion, who taught in Madison. But I run into students, and it's so delightful to see what they're doing with their lives. And if they give you a tiny bit of credit, then that's nice too. But it's just a guy stopped by last Saturday, and I didn't think he'd ever leave. He was such a nice guy, but he went to the county college, the normal school, and then he went to the campus, and he ended up being a CPA, which just blows my mind. I mean, he had to be smart, but he was delighted with his experience at our campus. So for teachers, it's very, very rewarding. And I would just say about these 2 books, you can write a mystery story, but if it isn't authentic, if it doesn't feel real, you drift, your mind drifts. And I haven't finished the new book because I got my copy late yesterday, and, you're just compelled to read it. But because I'm an English teacher, or maybe not, I stop when a line is good, or when I see the way something was developed in a paragraph, and I think, wow, this guy knows how to write. And it just gives me great pleasure. I reread books, and I know these are books. As soon as I finish the new one, I think I'll read the first one again, so hurry up with the third one. And I'm sounding...
No pressure, Jeff.
I'm sounding like a cheerleader, but... I read every night, and I pick up British mysteries or things like that. And some of them, you don't remember them 2 days after you finish them. And some of them have subjects I don't care about. But this guy, I think he understands people, men and women. And as I read, he understands guns, because there are guns in this, which I don't understand. And there are cars and car wrecks, and he talks about. So what you write about, and I think a reader can tell that. So that's why I say authenticity. And because it's Valentine's Day, I'm so thankful that I think there's romance in this book, and little old ladies need a little of that. And I hope Julie and our hero John are going to finally resolve whatever silly differences they might have. But anyway, I just thoroughly enjoyed it, and I take so much pleasure in the fact that both Dale and Jeff were Marion's students. I think she was a wonderful teacher, and she died way too soon, and I will always miss her. But I just feel like things like this bring her right back, and I think she's up in heaven rejoicing for both of you.
Let's review. Dale kind of touched on it a bit, Jeff, but this family outing where you'd come together and read, and all of a sudden you were void of a book, so you stepped in with your pencil, didn't you?
Actually, right. We bought mystery books for the whole camp, my kids and my siblings and their children, and we'd read them together. And we wouldn't sit together and read them, but we'd say, hey, what page you on? And what do you think happened here? And we enjoyed it. It was a great exercise. And
what was the age range of those who were reading, Jeff?
Oh, I would say probably 8 to older people.
He looked at me when he said that.
Which would be my older brother, not me. And this writer did not write a book. And I said, I'll do that. And I wrote Figure 8. And that is the whole thing. And my wife submitted it to a publisher and supported me through this whole process. And, I've got to tell you, I enjoy the idea that people have liked this book. It has made me so happy to meet with people who tell me they like it. And that's what I wanted, something that everybody could read and enjoy.
Did you get over the fact of being vulnerable to someone who might not like it or somebody who might not think that you hit the mark, Jeff?
I did. It's interesting that... and I don't want to curse myself, but we had one review that was not favorable. And it's interesting about that review. It was someone who described the text of the book and said, this is just another story like that. And he is entitled to his own, you be a cop for a few years, you get a pretty thick skin. And, but the truth is, this is a real story. Figure 8 is a real story. There are law enforcement officers and other people who have read that book and understand completely. And, in one of the cases in the first book, John Cabrelli goes through a period of having post-traumatic stress disorder. This is not an uncommon thing with people in the military or in emergency services. It is not uncommon. And he deals with it the way a lot of people deal with it. So, I tell people, if you read the book and you like it, say something nice. If you read the book and you don't like it, just be quiet.
Your mother and my mother and you subscribe to the same theory. So, yeah. If you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything at all.
That's what my mother used to say. It was that generation.
Just to sit down in front of this table, Jeff, and see the book in front of you, is it the same feeling with a second book?
Times 10.
Times 10. That's awesome.
I was so excited to come here today, you can't believe it. Spider Lake was fun to write. You know what? I can't hardly stand to read Spider Lake because it's so tense, and I wrote it.
Yes, it is.
And this was just just wonderful. And I'm working on a third book now. And
Same characters. But, when you say about getting things right, it is very important to me to get things right. I have in my life, my wife says I accumulate characters. They're all my friends. And so in things regarding law enforcement, I want it all to be correct. And in the third book, last week I spent a day with a medical examiner and retired FBI agent from
Madison to make sure that we have everything just right.
Somebody would catch you if a real fact was untrue. So good for you.
Well, then there are a lot of police officers, both active and retired, who read the first book, and I can guarantee you if there were mistakes, they would let me know at the first opportunity.
Well, that's why I said authentic, because, and I don't mean just facts. It seems like the characters seem real. Sometimes you read books and you just can't believe that the characters are who they are or say what they are. And dialogue is the hardest thing in the world to write. It truly is. To get it right, to get the cadence and the words and the interaction. And your dialogue is, you've got a good ear. Maybe you heard a lot at home.
Well, the character in the book, John Cabrelli, this might sound a little strange, but he's really become a friend of mine.
No, that isn't strange at all.
And he's become a voice for a lot of things. Mm-hmm. And not preachy and not anything like that, but sharing experience.
And I'm kind of half in love with him, so you're supposed to laugh at that.
Okay,
But he's such a likable. I mean, sometimes he does dumb things, so he puts himself in harm's way. But you just can't help but be drawn to him because he is such a good person, and I'm a romantic anyway. So he just he's a wonderful protagonist for you.
He's a good person, and he's just trying to find his way through life. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of people who go through that.
He's not perfect.
He's definitely not perfect.
And that's what humankind is.
Are you to the point, Jeff, where you'd say, what would Cabrelli do in this case when you're thinking about your own life?
Yeah. I think this is a trap.
He had to be Italian, didn't he?
He did.
He's not an Irishman.
No, he's definitely not an Irishman. I think that is a complicated question. I think sometimes I find myself thinking about something and thinking, was that me thinking about that, or was that Cabrelli? And so, yeah, you can't help but avoid that, especially when you're working on the book. So, in the third book, it's just a ton of fun writing this. And
people do that in the theater too. You assume a character, a role you're playing, and sometimes in the thick of it, it's hard to decide who you are, whether you're the character on stage or whether you're yourself. And of course, you have to be both. So I think in writing, it's the same thing. You kind of have to be both. You have to enter his head.
And it's nothing I do intentionally. It just is the way it works out. You know, I just enjoy writing the story. I really like these books. And if nobody else likes them, I still like them myself.
Dale, how long did it take you to become engaged in this book? You talked about the first two paragraphs. We're going to try to talk Jeff into reading.
I read the book in 2 sittings, 300 pages. I couldn't put it down. Honest to Pete, I started it a little later in the evening, and I was thrilled, but I knew I had to get to bed because I had to get up in the morning and get my hour of swimming in out at the campus, and we're so lucky to have that, and I'm so grateful for that opportunity. And as soon as I got back, I picked up the book and I read until it was done. And it was a page turner from the minute I started it the second day until I finished it. And then I excitedly had to call Jeff. Told him it was better than the first book. And I'm not a literary critic, but I know what I like and I know what intrigues me. And, I just see Jeff growing, but I have to tell you, I've seen Jeff grow many times. What perhaps some of the listeners don't know is Jeff has had as many different careers as we were told or are telling our kids they're going to have in their lifetime. And I don't mean different jobs, I mean careers. And Gene talks about authenticity. That only comes from experience. So Jeff's experiences from being a pretty accomplished gunsmith to an art gallery owner to a nationally recognized wetland restoration specialist, a pioneer in the environmental charter school movement, being a police officer. All these things contribute to a richness in not only the main protagonist in the book, John Cabrelli, but contribute to all the characters, because these characters that he brings in are rooted in these other careers quite often, and it makes it very attractive. And so, yeah, I think Jeff, in his involvement with law enforcement, but all emergency medical services, allows him to, in a way, talk about those everyday heroes, to tie it back to where we were earlier, and makes the book very intriguing. And, again, we need heroes. This world we live in now, where people suck lemons and eat prunes all day long. I want to read something about somebody who's grounded in real values and right, and is intelligent, and finds a way to kind of cut through the BS, again, without being preachy, but by just showing the way life should be, what right is right. And I think the characters in the books, not just John, but so many of them, demonstrate that, and I think that's what makes the book enjoyable.
So leave the lemons and prunes home tomorrow and come to Oak Hooch Books and Libations, right?
Yeah. And Dale's right. I really hope, and we were at a book event, and one of the questions I ask people in Figure 8 is John Cabrelli a hero or not? I mean, you have to read the book and make your own decisions. But there was a guy sitting in the front row, in the right corner in front of me. And I said, heroes, they don't wear a sign around their neck that says, I'm a hero. The great heroes are teachers. The great heroes are the mother who walks their kid through a bomb zone to get her to school every day. But there sitting was a guy who was, I think, still the only National Police Medal of Valor winner from Wisconsin. And here's this little guy sitting there just smiling and enjoying himself. And I thought, that was wonderful. And, just this weekend, I was in Wisconsin Rapids on a panel about writing stories, and I mentioned the book that Jean and her sister wrote. It was people say, Joyce, I'd like to write a book, or and I think they should, because there are a lot of stories that if they're never written, they'll never be told. They'll be lost. They wrote a charming, just wonderful book about running a grocery store in Richland Center around the 30s and 40s. A time that molded our nation. And
do people have to read the first book before they read the second book, Jeff?
Not necessarily. I would say that probably most people do it that way. And,
it's richer if you do it that way, because you have the back knowledge, but it could stand independently. I think we need to mention, and I think one of the first reasons I was attracted to the book, I didn't even know you then, well, of course, the school connection, but the up north connection. It was written about up north Wisconsin, and Kitty and her husband have a lovely place up north, and it is so beautiful, and it's a world of difference from Richland Center. Of course, we're better, but and I don't know whether the towns you name are made-up names or some of them are real or not, but you just feel like you're up north, and you recognize a lot of that, and I love a vacation up north, and I think that's a very nice attraction, so that it's a story of place that figures into it.
It is, and my family this year. So the original story about this place in northern Wisconsin was my dad, before I was born, was grouse hunting with a friend of his. And they stayed at this work camp that the guy was converting to a resort. My dad said, well, can I bring my kids back here? Yeah, he said, that's what I'd like to do. I'd like families to come. This will be our 70th year at that resort.
Consecutive?
70 consecutive years.
Wow.
And you or not you, you're not that old, but drove up there when the roads weren't as good as they are now.
My dad used to load
north.
us in the car, throw us in the back, basically no seat belts, no car seats, no nothing.
Which explains a lot.
Right. Well, and there were I had 4 brothers. There were 5 boys. He'd tie one of us to the roof if he had
your
to.
poor mother.
And away we'd go up the roads, and we just had a great time. When I was doing wetland restoration work and law enforcement, I ended up back at that same location. And it really was kind of the title of Figure 8 is, we find our way back to the same spot at different times in our life, and it's a completely different experience. But and I love northern Wisconsin. I did a lot of wetland projects there and shoreline restoration. And
well, and in the book, there's trouble in northern Wisconsin. There's some bad things going on economically, and I haven't finished it, and I'm not going to talk about what I do know because it's only partial knowledge. But I kept thinking, could this happen in northern Wisconsin? Then I realized, yes, it could happen anywhere. So that's part of what pulls us along to see who done it and what's going to happen. So there are a lot of threads going on, and you control them all. As far as I am in the novel, you control them all well and keep us reading and reading. And I have to go home and finish it today, but I got other things I have to do as well. But it's a book you want to sit down and read.
We'll take a break. When we come back, maybe, Jeff, we can, talk you into reading us a little bit if you'd be willing.
I'll do whatever you want me to do.
Oh, that's awesome. Tomorrow at 1 o'clock, you will be at Okootch Books and Libations downtown. You'll have books. You'll sign.
Yes.
Will you do some reading tomorrow and Q&A?
Whatever happens, I'll do it.
Okay. Well, it'll be a fun time. So 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon at Okootch Books and Libations. We'll be back to talk more on the morning show in just a moment. Thank you for being a part of our conversation on the morning show today. Jeff Nania, author, is with us today. He will be at Okootch Books and Libations in downtown Richland Center tomorrow, Saturday afternoon, beginning at 1 o'clock. You can come out. Those of you who did last year, come and learn about the brand new book that Jeff is debuting at this event. Also, it's today, right, Jean? At 1 o'clock, Jeff will be at Schmidt Woodland Hills. So if your Valentine's travels would allow you to come and join the residents at Schmidt, that will be at 1 o'clock in the second floor activity room. So just a good chance. How about if we pitch to you the challenge that Dale mentioned? The first 2 paragraphs, what a way to begin a book is what he said. And isn't that captures the essence of what you challenged us with this morning, Dale?
Absolutely.
Dale Schultz is with us today, so is Gene Burkett, and now author Jeff Nania.
This is something I've thought a lot about, and people who have read the book have commented a lot on. But it's just 2 paragraphs. Life is one of the most squandered of all our natural resources. Who hasn't wished a day, week, or month away? Tough week. I can't wait till it's over. Only 5 more years to retirement. There's a cure for that. In my case, getting shot and almost dying gave me a new appreciation for being alive. I hope that I am never dumb enough to waste another minute, much less a day. It was with this attitude that I embraced the extensive physical therapy that was designed to literally get me back on my feet. 2 rounds from a 9mm fired by a crooked cop had come close to putting an end to John Cabrelli. But as they say, close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. And I know if I think about my own life, and Dale said I've had a lot of careers. I've had more fun than I should have been allowed to have. But we all sometimes lose track of our days. And
So interestingly enough, Dale, if we read only the first 2 paragraphs of Spider Lake, we could benefit and reflect and have a book discussion, couldn't we?
Well, you could have a discussion about life, without
Philosophy.
a doubt. Yeah, without a doubt. And throughout the book, our hero, John Cabrelli, reflects about things around him that are important to him. And I think all of us probably have the same feelings, and that fact that throughout the book that he's doing that really builds a connection with the reader in a way that is really very pleasant, because in doing that he brings back to all of us a lot of our life and what we've thought is important, even if we forget it from time to time. And, Gene mentioned, that connection with northern Wisconsin. How many of us have families that have gathered up north or came from up north? It's a special place. And I don't think of it as better than down here, because I'm with Gene. I live in a 23rd Sound place, as Governor Dreyfus used to say. But I do have many fond memories of being up north and being at resorts. And our family had a long tradition at a resort up there, but it was nowhere near as long as Jeff's. But I know there are plenty of people in town here who will understand that and be drawn to this character because of that experience that Jeff had and communicates so well in the book.
How has the family discussion, this reading adventure that your family's been on, changed when you became the author?
Well, that's an interesting question. My family has enjoyed the books tremendously. They will be getting a copy this June of the next book in rough form, and they are very quick to point out any mistakes, particularly their uncle might have made in the book, from my nieces and nephews. But it's been wonderful. It's been much more fun, and I put a lot of stuff in there that they really enjoy. So
I think the loyalty of your own real family is reflected in John and his respect for his Uncle Nick. Isn't it? Is he Nick? Am I saying the right name?
Yeah.
He inherits the cabin from him. But just through the book, his memory of him and his loyalty, that's nice to see, that kind of family tie that everybody doesn't have. But it's a great gift if people have this sense of connectedness with their family. And I think you've reflected that. I think it happened to you because that's the kind of a family you had.
Well, I think that, we've met, you can't believe all the people we've met that have these traditions where they go up north. I mean, you just can't believe it. It's been wonderful. These traditions really form the fabric of our lives. And the more I learn about this, the more I think that these traditions are the basis, the foundation for our lives. If you look at cases where people are struggling, maybe they aren't doing as well as they had hoped in their life and things, you oftentimes see that maybe these traditions were missing. But it's been great. I met these folks who are 78 years. They've been going up to the same lake, 78 years. And I thought, and all of the great adventures that they have. Muskie fishing for me is a big deal. I like fishing muskies, and so does my whole family.
But this isn't a man's book. It's an everybody's book. I mean, I've fished a few times, but it doesn't interest me very much. So it's wonderful that is all in there, but I don't think this book is, there are guns in there and cars in there. And I was just thinking last night, he knows all about guns and he knows about the underneath of cars and things. So that's authentic, but and that works. So if you put him in there and made mistakes, it would be a dumb book. But those things are real. So that's why I keep going back to saying it feels authentic. It feels very real. It's funny too. We haven't mentioned that. John is funny sometimes. He's kind of dumb and funny in a benign way sometimes. Am I wrong about that?
Oh,
Probably.
no, you aren't wrong about that.
And some of the lines he'll say, or he kind of gets in these situations and he doesn't know what to do, and it makes him so human. But there is humor in it that just is enjoyable as you read along.
There's a couple of sentences here that I think illuminate that very well, and I'm not going to give the background, but you'll get the gist as I read it. I couldn't be sure, so I was again confused and now wet on top of it. It brought to mind two distinct possibilities. Either Julie Carlson was extremely complex, or I was extremely dense. Maybe both. How often have we felt like that?
Today.
Yeah. Julie had
Every day.
Julie had been miffed and just dumped water on him because she was miffed, and it wasn't meant to be malicious, but it was just the only way she could,
Respond.
express her frustration. And here again, you see some authenticity. I suspect maybe at one time in his life, Jeff may have had something dumped on his head by a significant other. But
I don't really recall anything like that, Dale, but if I think of anything, I'll let you know.
We'll let him ponder that while we take our final break, and we'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back to the final portion of our conversation on the morning show today, featuring Jeff Nania, who is the author of a book that you can be a part of and learn about tomorrow at Oakooch Books and Libations in downtown Richland Center. It's a second annual event, if you will, because it was this very time last year that Jeff's first book was introduced and so well embraced and just a terrific turnout. And we hope that tomorrow will be exactly the same. So come back if you can't, but you could today at 1 o'clock at Schmidt Woodland Hills in the second floor activity room. Jeff will be there and sharing. What if no one else but your family read these books? They would have never gotten the hands of Dale Schultz and Jean Burkett. Only in your family. Would it still have been as rewarding and important to write these?
Absolutely. That's why I wrote the book. But I'll tell you, with other families reading this book together and other families enjoying these memories, it has made it just a wonderful experience. Again, I can't tell you how many nice people we have met at events around the state. It's just been great. But no, I wrote it for my family, and there's one part in the first book where my very accomplished emergency room physician brother, John Cabrelli, has been injured at a race, and my brother offers him a chocolate donut as a cure-all. My brother, the eminent physician, believes that chocolate donuts are the cure-all for everything.
Do you have people who say, "Hey, Jeff, you were writing about me"?
All the time. I had the mayor of a town in northern Wisconsin say, "Hey, that's our town." I said, "No, it's not." And I read them the disclaimer in the front says this is completely fictional. Yes, and there is, there are some similarities. Two of the characters in the book are J.J. Malone, who is a hard-bitten head of the Organized Crime Task Force. It so happens that, this is coincidental, that J.J. Maloney was my partner, very accomplished law enforcement officer, became a lieutenant, and worked with his wife, Tanya, who became a captain. She outranked him, always has outranked him, really, even before they started climbing up. And they are advisors on the book, and we have a great time. And he says things to me like, and he's got this gruff voice. He goes, "Hey, I wouldn't have said anything like that." And I said, "Well, that's good. It's not you."
What? I mean, this has added so much to your life, hasn't it?
It has. I was writing feature stories for Intermedia Outdoors, and I've done that for a long time, and I really enjoyed writing those. But, you're writing this story of someone in a feature story, And in 1,300 words or 1,400 words or 1,500 words, it's very hard to make sure you're telling the story. And this is kind of like expanding that. There are a lot of people. I'm telling a lot of people's stories in these books, and I'm enjoying it, and so are they. But, I'm not constrained by it. I can write whatever I want. And it's made it great.
But I really do believe that all of that other writing in the articles hones your skills. The more you write, the more confident you get, and the more fluent you get. And so, not that you weren't a good writer then, and you're still doing those articles, but those things are all part of the process. Everybody is always learning about writing, I think, as you go along. So that was ideal for you. And when you decided you had to tell a story, you were well prepared to do it, or it wouldn't have felt right to the reader.
I think that I could tell you that writing feature stories about people and their lives is the most difficult type of writing I have ever done. It takes me forever because I really want to tell their story. And I don't know if we have time, but so recently a guy wrote a letter to the Wisconsin Outdoor News and said, I just remembered how when I returned from World War II, I went deer hunting for the first time, returning home, and how I was walking through the woods carrying my rifle and no one was shooting at me. Oh. So I went to interview this guy. The editor called me and said, you got to talk to him. One of the most incredible people I've ever met in my life. How do you write his story in 1,200 words?
The World War II boys were incredible. I married one.
Well,
they had stories to tell.
Well, they had stories to tell, but they also had this sense of responsibility and this sense of community and this sense of building society. And, talk about heroes.
The greatest generation.
And you know what else? They did not sell our world for a cheap price. Mm-hmm. They were all part of making things work.
And did you write an article about him then?
I did. You know what the best part of the article was? So he says, he was wounded, and he got sent back to the States. And he said, one morning I woke up, and there in front of my bed was an angel. He said, I couldn't believe it. Well, I've been in law enforcement, near-death experience. You hear about this all the time. He goes, yep. We ended up being married for 65 years.
Think of that.
Oh, gosh, we're out of time this morning, Jeff. Congratulations.
Thank you so
Spider
much.
Lake is the new book. It will be debuted tomorrow. Dale, I'll give you 30 seconds to tell our listeners why tomorrow is a must-attend event at Oak Couch Books and Libations.
Well, I've said this for a long time. One of the truisms in life for me is I've learned I have friends everywhere I go. I just have to take time to meet them. And it's clear that Jeff has met a lot of people along the way. He's become friends with them. And you have an opportunity to become friends with him if you come to the book signing tomorrow. I know you'll have a good time, and you may just leave with a book that you can spend a few of the cold afternoons and nights with in front of the fire reading. And I just have to say this. I suspect that the only people who are disappointed about the characters in Jeff's book is that they can't find one about themselves. So no matter how he paints them, the fact that they're in there, I'm sure people find comforting. But it's that kind of book, and it's a great chance to meet friends and neighbors and return home with something that will continue those memories.
If people can't come Saturday, Daniel has your books at Oak Couch.
Absolutely.
So stop
Yes.
down and get one.
You
and
bet.
Be set. So
Signed ones, I hope.
And we need
Yeah.
to say thank you to WRCO,
Yes.
to you, Ron, to Dawn Kiefer, the Richland Observer, and Daniel for everything that he's done. We have a great community, a lot of people working to make it better, and sometimes I think it's important that we just recognize all of you and say thank you, because it's
Absolutely.
what makes living here what it is.
should I write you in for Valentine's Day 2021?
Hey, listen, I'll be here. Okay. I wouldn't miss it.
I hope I will be too.
Thanks to all of you.
Thank
Best
you so
wishes.
much.
1 o'clock this afternoon at Schmidt Woodland Hills in the second floor activity room. Jeff will be there. And then the key outing will be the special book signing on Saturday at 1 o'clock at Oak Hooch Books and Libations in downtown Richland Center. Make it a part of your weekend. Hope that you'll return with us on Monday.